of yesteryear in various different Sephardic locales, Sephardic places respectively. Now today I wanted to speak about a famous Syrian synagogue called the Shaarei Zion Synagogue, obviously based in New York, and it's a very, very flourishing Syrian community they've got in America, which was very excited to speak about this. And we've spoken about many different synagogues already. We're really targeting, like exploring the history behind the Sephardi synagogues all over internationally, and this is an export of calls to the congregation Shaarei Zion, or Kahal Kadosh Shaarei Zion as we say in Hebrew. Obviously it's a Jewish Sephardic synagogue, obviously under the Orthodox stream, and located in an ocean parkway in Brooklyn in New York. It is, I think, under the leadership of Rabbi Meir Yedid, respectively. It was, I think, reported over, it was established as a congregation all the way back in the year 1941. The architect actually that, designed this synagogue was someone named Maurice Lapidus, respectively enough. I think it was completed, the building in 1960. And it's a beautiful synagogue made of concrete, steel, marble, and glass, and much is... They say that here in modern day, approximately 1,500 people, mitzpalelim, prayers, will attend services either on Friday or on Saturdays, on the Shabbat services itself, making it one of the largest Sephardic synagogues in North America, respectively. I think, obviously, it's been running for well over 50 years. The synagogue has hosted, reported over 10,000 occasions of celebrations, at least, even if not much more. Brit milahs, circumcisions, bar mitzvah celebrations, engagements, and weddings. So it's been a very, very, Baruch Hashem, a lot of blessings to it. The synagogue, serves, the Aleppo, the Hanapi descendants of Syrian Jewish community. It's that's what it's concentrating on over there. Now, I think it was started in the year 1941, originally as a local minyan, led by prominent Syrian Jewish families. I think it was actually based in 1756 Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. And I think at that stage in time, very, very early days, there was about 75 people coming. But the high holy days itself, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, would increase at the very early days to as many as 750 people. And there was a nearby hall, I think the Aperian Manor at 815 Kings Highway, I think, which would hold it. Now, come what the year 1951 would be a landmark time period. The land was purchased on Ocean Parkway, I think between the avenues T and U. And come what 1953, plans architecturally were drawn up for the synagogue building at that point in time. Now, construction will begin. I think a building fund of $250,000, $250,000, and would actually start this up. Let's say, come what 1957, various other funds had been raised or pledged, and the house, sold for $90,000, allowing construction to resume. Now, I think come what 1958, the high for the Yomim Noraim prayers, the High Holy Day prayers, I think it was held originally in the unfinished hall, and construction would not be complete until 2 years later. It was designed by someone named Maurice Lapidus and was completed in the year 1960. I think they could seat more than 400 people originally. Now, the design included a curved balcony, central dome, which made of concrete reinforced with steel rods. And I think it's reported that the New York City Building Department would insist the balcony be supported by 20 columns. And that was another, I think, requirement, if I'm not mistaken. A hall was also built behind the sanctuary for social events and provide space for additional services in busy periods. I think the main sanctuary of Shaarei Zion would open for 2,100 congregants of the High Holy Days in 1960. There was a banquet room, a dome, a terrace room in the basement, and a midrash upstairs will be all utilized. And since the construction, the building had required not much exterior maintenance. Dome was, I think, repainted in the year 1903, and 2 glass panes were replaced. Okay, come on 1990, would be expand further. I think they would buy the house next door on the north side of the building, and come on 1991, known as the Annex Building, which is used obviously for daily tefillot, prayers, and Torah study. And I think there's office space also in the building. In 1996, there would have been a renovation done in the social hall at that point in time. There was a new synagogue building known as the Bnei Shaarei Zion, which was capable of sitting upwards 250 prayers. There was a Bet Midrash over there, study hall, with dual prayer space on the upper level. And during the 2000s, more restoration work was carried out, I think especially on the dome of the main sanctuary. Very interesting enough. Okay. there was, I think, secondary proposed expansion, I think in December 2011, to expand. So that was in the making at that point in time. And so that's very interesting. I think, I'm not sure if it was expanded or not. And very interesting, I think, Rabbi Kassin was born actually back in the year 1900. Rabbi Jacob Kassin, one of the great rabbis who's spoken about him before in this series. He was brought in to lead the congregation as a new chief rabbi of the community in 1932. We're going to speak about him in due course, hopefully. He was instrumental in establishing several building edicts during his tenure, I think 1935. I think there was a famous conversion to Judaism proclamation, which I recommend everyone to look at. His son-in-law was another famous rabbi, Rabbi Baruch Ben Haim, very great rabbi, lived between 1921 to 2005. He would also serve in a leadership role for the synagogue and the community, and is credited with, let's say, a number of contributions to the synagogue itself, including the founding of the Shaarei Zion Torah Center, let's just say, where many congregants spend their time learning, studying Torah. And Torah Center was established to educate community on subjects of Jewish law, halakha, and Torah, respectively. Various classes all throughout there, especially in the mornings and evenings, were given out. I think 1940s to 1950s, rabbi of the congregation was a rabbi named Rabbi Kurt Klappholz. He happened to be an Ashkenazi-born rabbi, was born actually in Berlin, I think, interesting enough. He would be also a principal, I believe, of the Magen David Yeshiva School. Hopefully we'll speak about him in due course. He actually, I think his parents came from Polish heritage also. And interesting enough, Rabbi Yaakov Kassin's son, Rabbi Shaul Kassin, originally served as consulting rabbi along with another famous rabbi, Rabbi Avram Hecht, who would take over when Rabbi Klappowitz left for another position at that point in time. Rabbi Hecht would serve the Sephardic community for a staggering 50 years, directing a large minyan of the main sanctuary, offering classes in Jewish law, as well as scheduling and attending social receptions such as Bar Mitzvah, Brit Milot. Also, he'd officiate countless wedding ceremonies, and so on and so forth. Other notable rabbinic figures which we're going to speak about, hopefully in due course. Another one was Rabbi Dr. Raymond Harari, who directed the Bnei Shaarei Zion Minyan in the former banquet hall for 18 years also. Which you have to point out, he would leave for another position later on. I think he would head a Kol Yisrael's congregation in Midwood, Brooklyn later on. And I think then later on he would lead the Mikdash Eliyahu synagogue in Gravesend neighborhood. And he was, I think, he would take on, I think, currently Rosh Yeshiva, the Yeshiva of Flatbush in of itself. Rabbi Yaakov Ben Haim, Rabbi David Maslaton would lead the new Bnei Shaarei Zion Synagogue in this specific place in itself. Now, let's speak a bit about the Syrian Jewish community just for a minute, and then we're going to speak more about the congregation. I think the first Syrian Jews to arrive in the United States was Jacob Dweck and Ezra Sit, both from Aleppo originally. They would sail from Liverpool in England, I think in 1892, to be precise, on July the 22nd, on the Germania. After the start of the 20th century, more immigrants would come to the United States. I think 3 reasons there was for this. Economic decline in Syria that happened to have been at that point in time. There was, this will cripple their ability to earn a living. Secondly, the Young Turks, a rebel group responsible for the overthrow of the Ottoman Sultan, were conscripting Jews into the army at that point in time. Also, let's just say the rise of Zionism led to increased anti-Semitism in the Middle Eastern region. The most settled on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. There was various settlements that would start in Bensonhurst, Midwood, let's just say Flatbush, Ocean Parkway, in Gravesend, Brooklyn, and the latter, I think, was considered to be the current center of the community. And though the community was formerly centered around the Magen David Synagogue, which hopefully we'll speak about also, in the Bensonhurst neighborhood, obviously that will, so that's very interesting. Congregation Shaarei Zion would become a breakthrough. Was obviously, we mentioned that, will be between Avenue T, Avenue U, housing several synagogues in a single building. The synagogue was constructed, I think, in 1960, which we just spoke about before, and the community will flourish very much so all throughout the various different points of time. So we have to point that out also. So that was around then. I think Rabbi Shaul J. Kassin II, he passed away, I think, in December 1st, 2018. So he would have an integral role, along with his brother-in-law, Rabbi Baruch Ben Chaim, all throughout. They were the spiritual leaders of the Syrian Jewish community in New York. until they passed away, respectively. I think 1994 and 2005. I think Rabbi Shaul Kassin, II, would pass down his seat as a chief rabbi to his firstborn grandson, Rabbi Shaul Kassin III, who's very interesting enough. So, I think he's the head currently of the congregation Magen David of West Hill and the Rosh Yeshiva of the Hillel Yeshiva also. And now that we spoke about Rav Avram Hecht, also become a very, very integral part of the Syrian Jewish community over there. And rabbinical duties, currently there's various rabbis, including Rabbi Yaakov ben Chaim, son of Rabbi Baruch ben Chaim, Rabbi David Maslaton, Rabbi Meir Yedid, he's a son of last chief rabbi of Aleppo, Rabbi Yom Tov Yedid, Rabbi Raymond Haber, Rabbi Raymond Bader. And I think the synagogue, obviously, we know is going through serving the Chalabi community itself, respectively. But we'll try and speak about the Magen David congregation also in due course, as we will progress this series at the moment, because I think it's just very, very important what we're doing, and just knowing about the history of this very, very prominent synagogue, and getting the science behind who were the great rabbis behind the place, what was the history behind the place itself, learning just about the original Syrian community, very flourishing community, known as one of the strongest Jewish communities, without doubt, in America. So it's always a privilege to speak about it. And now we're going to concentrate a bit more from and just some of the great rabbis that were connected to there, and more information within regards to the Shaarei Zion Synagogue, respectively. Okay, now we're just using notes. I think they've got a website, respectively, which I recommend everyone to look at, ShaareiZionNY.com, to be precise. It's known, and let's just say, as the largest synagogue and the mother kenis of the Sephardic Syrian community in Brooklyn, in New York. And obviously it's following the ancient tradition of the Chalabi community, the Aleppo Syrian community. Obviously we spoke about how they would come at late 19th century, early 20th century. The community arrived in the century. They initially settled on Lower East Side of Manhattan originally. They would grow, and move to Bensonhurst, as we stated before, into the Brooklyn area, establishing the Talmud Torah and a synagogue called Magen David of Bensonhurst. Obviously in 1950, we said before, the community began to move. At the time, the flagship synagogue was transferred from Magen David of Bensonhurst to Shaarei Zion. Now that typically, had hundreds of members attending minyanim, especially on Shabbatot and on festivals, Chagim, and dozens of classes on a daily basis, and various different programs that fit various age ranges, different levels of observance originally, and different levels of advanced studies there was. Opened, as the website says itself, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, raising millions of dollars for various institutions in the community, in Israel and worldwide. So it's really a synagogue that really helps internationally also. So very interesting. Every institution is established and gets its initial start from Shaarei Zion, which is stated over. And obviously way more than 50 years of existence. The synagogue, as we said before, has hosted tens of thousands of celebrations, smachot, mitzvah, bar mitzvah, engagements, weddings, brit milah, and catering the needs to every individual of the community. We stated that it started as a local minyan originally, and how it started only with 75, people praying there, and obviously on the high holidays 750. And I think on March 1951, the 6 leaders from Shaarei Zion committee met to discuss acquisition of land of the synagogue. That was the original, and they would choose at that point in time, as I said before, the plot of land on Ocean Parkway, Avenue T and U. And in 1953, the architectural plans were drawn up at that point in time and come in. So that's very, very interesting. So we have to point out. And obviously, the architect was someone we mentioned before, Morris Lapidus, respectively. And we spoke about the elegant style of the synagogue itself, how it's carpeted, let's just say, and designed in of itself. Now, what's interesting is, one of the beauties about the synagogue is the roof. We didn't speak about this before, of the dome. It was constructed concrete reinforced with steel rods, very strong and intact, and I think it has it's a real bolstered and the wood trims carpentered, and which will be replaced several times. And it's interesting, the carpeting is regularly replaced every few years, and I think there's a chairman of the building committee in the 1950s, his name was famous for us, David Eliyahu Cohen. He stated himself, he commented about it, there were never any leaks in the roof in the structure, And then he would add on in 1990, 30 years after the building was completed, 2 panes of the glass wall, and the dome had been weathered. We replaced 2 glass panes, like we said before, which is very interesting. Obviously, we spoke about how the community will expand in 1990, 1991, 1996, with the renovations halls and the Bnei Shaarei Zion. We've already spoken about that. Let's explore a few of the highlights of some of the great rabbis associated with the Shaarei Zion Synagogue, including, first of all, another rabbi we've spoken about on the series where we're doing biography videos, a famous rabbi named Rabbi Matlub Abadi. He was born in the late 19th century in Halab in Aleppo. Obviously, he became very, very knowledgeable in Torah at a very young age, and was seen as an outstanding Talmid Chacham and a Torah leader. I think he was only 20 years of age. He would actually come to Eretz Israel. He would move to Israel and continue, obviously, a top-level learning. He was very close and a colleague of the famous Rabbi Ezra Atiyah. He happened to have been a founder and lifelong Rosh Yeshiva of the famous bastion of Sephardic yeshivot of the world, Yeshiva Porat Yosef, let's just say. And he would also, I think, at that point in time, would get married to Rabbinit Esther Nachum, the daughter of Rabbi Ezra Nachum, who was, I think, a very outstanding, let's say, Bukharian Jew, respectively. In the early parts of the 20th century, Rabbi Abadi would immigrate to the United States of America and begin from the spiritual life in the community. He would start teaching Talmud, Torah in Bensonhurst, and would become a principal shortly after. His Torah education, this is, it helped create a solid foundation to many of the youth, in which helped set them on the course to live a religious and traditional lifestyle. Many of the elderly members, I think, in current day, would actually the community credit Rabbi Abadi for molding them to their religious backgrounds. He was also a member of the Magen David Bet Din, the Jewish court, involving himself in resolving disputes among members of the community. That's another crucial point. And I don't think he ever accepted, to report over, an official rabbinic title or pulpit assignment in the community. His primary focus and goal always remained the same: to teach Torah and educate the community. He used to say that he is chained by the Talmud, the Ramban, and Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, and the top Sephardic authorities, and can never deviate in their decisions. I think it was in Magen David of Bensonhurst in the 1930s, he began his famous Shabbat afternoon classes with prominent and learned laymen of the community. This class would grow and continue as the community moved to Shaarei Zion. I think for 40 years, as many as that, Rabbi Abadi had a very strong nucleus, and at the same time, you could say loyal group of students that would learn from him and follow his ways. All of these actual people, what was key about this group of people, this nucleus, will become many founders and leaders of, let's just say, of many major community institutions, including synagogues, Talmudei Torah, and yeshivot. So really, really integral and powerful these things had in of itself, these nucleus people. Many of these men obviously will be still very active in community projects today, and many of the children also respectively. I think towards the end of his life, Rabbi Abadi wrote a Magen Ba'adi, a book on Torah law, halacha. I think in 1970, he was at the age of 83. The rabbi sadly passed away in Brooklyn. His funeral will be held in Magen David. There were eulogies from many of the prominent great rabbis over there. There was way more than 1,000 people, both inside and outside, that came to pay their last respects to the great rabbi itself. And obviously very, very great Talmud Chacham. He was buried in Israel in Har Menuchot, the Mount of Resting's place. I think the rabbi's Safarim and personal writings reported over are kept safely in a special Rabbi Matlub Abadi library in Shaarei Zion. And got this information from Joe Mansell, who I think is an integral part of the community itself, respectively, which are excellent notes and excellent work he's doing for the community. Another key great rabbi of Shaarei Zion is Rabbi Baruch ben Hayim, another great rabbi we've spoken about before. I think he passed away in 2005, and he was born actually in Jerusalem in the year 1921. He would enter at a young age the famous Yeshiva Porat Yosef also. Obviously would study under Rabbi Ezra Atiyah. He was part of, let's just say, the wonder class, which would include very famous rabbis, including Chacham Ovadia Yosef, Rabbi Ben Sion Abba Shaul, very famous Persian rabbi, Rabbi Tzyon Levi also, and many others went on to become some of the great leaders in Sephardi world in the 20th century. Interesting enough. I think in 1950, Chacham Baruch accepted a position from someone named, a great man named Isaac Shalom, Alav Shalom, and he would serve as a rabbi in the growing Syrian Sephardic community. The rabbi would begin teaching at the new, let's say at that point in time, Magen David Yeshiva, the first all-day private yeshiva, I think it was, in the community, Syrian community, respectively. He would work very closely with the chief rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Kassin, managing, administering community affairs. He got married to Rabbinit Charlotte. She happened to be the daughter of Rabbi Kassin, and began building a family in the community, it's reported over. He would spend 30 years teaching in the Magen David Yeshiva. Most members of that generation, obviously very proud to say that the foundation of Torah knowledge and religious life was credited to the great Chacham Baruch as a teacher indeed. I want to say from the outset, I listen all the time to probably thousands of classes of Rabbi Eli Mansour, a very, very popular speaker, international speaker, coming from the Syrian community itself. And on hundreds of occasions he's quoted Chacham Baruch, the great rabbi, respectively. And we've got massive hakarat, so debt of gratitude to Rabbi Eli Mansour for all his brilliant Torah class on the internet, which has really helped my growth as a human being all throughout these past 15 years, plus 17 years since I started listening to him. I just want to say that as a thank you. At the same time, while he was teaching, the rabbi would assist Rabbi Kassin in Shaarei Zion. He would officiate thousands of Brit Milahs, Bar Mitzvahs. Unfortunately, funerals would have to take place. I think it was the mid-1990s, he would serve as a rabbi of Shaarei Zion at that point in time. Chacham Baruch would establish the Shaarei Zion Torah Center, which you mentioned about before. Obviously, it was to let's educate and inspire laymen, businessmen, let's say professionals. And Shaarei Zion Torah Center has hundreds of people learning Torah in the mornings and evenings, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which is a large chunk to his credit. And it really caters also to all the community members, regardless of religious background or religious observance. Now, he passed away in June 2005. After many, unfortunately, did suffer from severe illness and deteriorating health just before that. And it would be attended by his funeral by around over 2,000 people. Many yeshivot arranged buses to bring students there, and the rabbi's body was flown to Israel, and the funeral was held at Porat Yosef, attended by over 1,000 people over there, and was buried also on Har HaMenachot in Jerusalem. And I think the 7-day Arayat was held in Magen David Yeshiva, and 30-day, the Shoshim, was held in Ohel Yaakov in Deal, New Jersey, Lawrence Avenue Synagogue over there, respectively, which we also have to point out. So I think various other memorial services took place after he passed away in Shaarei Zion, Deal Synagogue, Ohel Simcha in El Beron in New Jersey, and the great legacy he left and the huge impact he would leave on the community, and spiritual growth after the 60 years was massively towards his credit also. And he was very much a great rabbi in Syrian Jewish history, without a doubt. Another key rabbi of the Shaarei Zion Synagogue, which we must speak about, is Rabbi Raphael El-Nadav, once again taking this from the Shaarei Zion website over here. He was born also in 1921, just like Chacham Baruch, in Jerusalem. And he came from a prominent Yemenite family. He would study in Yeshiva Porat Yosef also at a young age in the Old City. He would receive rabbinic coordination there. He would study at Yeshiva Shaarei Zion in Jerusalem under Chief Rabbi Ben Zion Uziel, famous rabbi. He was Chief Rabbi between 1948 to 1953 respectively, and would become a Mohel, Shochet over there, and the Safrot. He would become a scribe, performing Brit Milahs also, and a kosher slaughterer. Also, I think he would also study Hazanot, and the renowned Sephardic Hazan, Rabbi Yaakov Levi, another famous rabbi, received various different top-level musical training, learning how to play instruments, and let's say diligently studying different makamot of Sephardic melodies, and was an expert Sephardic Hazan. And I think he would also serve in the Israeli army, especially in the 1948 Independence War, and would be offered a position as a Chazan in the main Sephardic synagogue in Tel Aviv. It's called the Ohel Moed, somewhere we've spoken about before. And while he was in his tenure in the Ohel Moed synagogue, Rabbi El-Nadav built up his reputation as a world-renowned expert in Sephardic Hazanot. Very interesting enough. I think come out the year 1955, he would be offered to be, let's say, head Hazan, a main rabbi of the growing Sephardic community in Cuba. Interesting enough. And after months of persuasion by the Cuban community, the rabbi would accept and move his young family to Cuba. In Cuba, he was involved in every aspect of Jewish life: Hazanut, Talmud Torah, halachic issues, Jewish law issues, kashrut, laws of kosher, forming marriages, fortunately divorces if needs be, and truly gave his life to improve the spiritual life of the Cuban community. And then I think at that point in time there was a newly formed Castro government which caused issues, and I think there will be a relocation at that point in time. And I think, very interesting enough, I think Rabbi Al-Nadav would actually, I think, move to America eventually and would become the Hazan of the Shaarei Zion, which at that stage in time was under construction in the early years, 1959. And obviously it was very difficult communist Cuba at that point in time. He would come and become the chief Hazan of the Syrian community, a very prominent position over there, and it would have a huge impact on the growing community. He would institute many new tunes, for example, various customs inside the tefillah, enabled everyone to build a relationship with God over there. And many people say that they learned how to pray by Rabbi El-Nadav, and he had this devotion and compassion when it came to prayers, that Shaarei Zion and many other synagogues grew, let's say, in stature and holiness because of that, and will help compile the famous Shir Ushbacha, which is considered the master text on Hazanut and Makomot for the Syrian community, respectively. And he would continue his career as Chazan in Shaarei Zion until he would retire in the year 1980, so well over 20 years, respectively. He was also a teacher in the Magen David Yeshiva while he was there, and the Yeshiva of Flatbush. And the rabbi was a huge Talmid Chacham, who loved teaching spiritual Torah to the youth and really raised spiritual levels over there to many, many people. He would spend later years of his life involved in many projects of Chazanut, for example, Sifrut, and I think the rabbi sadly passed away in 2012, and the Arayat was held in Shaarei Zion as a tribute to him, and left over a huge legacy. Now, another famous rabbi connected to the Syrian community, especially Shaarei Zion, was Rabbi Avram Hecht, another famous rabbi. He was born actually an Ashkenazi rabbi. He was born in the year 1922, and I think he was born in Brooklyn also. And he came from a long line of Lubavitch Hasidic roots. Interesting enough, he would receive his Torah education from various prominent yeshivot in the United States of America, and spent some time, let us say, learning in Europe. I think the outbreak of the Second World War he was forced to return home prematurely. As a young rabbi, Rabbi Hecht was a rabbi of a small community in Massachusetts, and in the early 1940s, this was around, during one summer in 1945, while vacationing in the Catskills with some of his community members, Rabbi Hecht was invited to speak one Shabbat afternoon, I think, by members of the Sephardic Syrian community who were vacationing, I think, there as well at that stage in time. The community members were extremely impressed with his fine English and great oratory skills. Remember, I'm reading this from the Shaarei Zion website over here, excellent note of it, as well as his diverse knowledge of Torah. The one-time drasha became a weekly drasha throughout the entire summer and attracted more and more people each week it would. And I think by the end, it's reported of that summer, he was offered a position as a rabbi of the youth program in Magen David or Bensonhurst and in the Talmud Torah, and graciously accepted and began his lifelong career as a rabbi in the community itself, the Syrian community. Come with the mid-1950s, Rabbi Hecht would move with the community to the Ocean Parkway area in Brooklyn, and within a couple of years was promoted to become official rabbi of the newly built Shaarei Zion. Obviously, he was a rabbi of the synagogue until his retirement in 1995, and then until the end of his life, Rabbi Hecht would remain affiliated and kept close ties with Shaarei Zion and entire community. Rabbi Hecht was known for delivering great speeches covering a wide range of topics from Torah to modern-day current events. Lectures were, let's say, renowned and were held in very high esteem, and he would officiate before over literally thousands of weddings, brit milahs, bar mitzvahs, and various other smachot, simchas, all throughout the community, and was loved by all. I think he had a large global appeal also to him and reach. He was a president of the Rabbinical Alliance of America, an organization that worked tirelessly for the welfare of Orthodox Jewish people in America. Rabbi Hecht was one of the first rabbis to speak in front of the US Congress, As he did this numerous times throughout his life and career, his goal was always to benefit the safety, freedom, and strength of the Syrian community and the Jewish world as a whole, let's just say. And he was also largely responsible in the 1990s, I think, for the release of Syrian Jews in the 1990s from Syria. Thousands of Jews are living in the community, the Syrian community itself, thanks to Rabbi Hecht's tireless efforts over there. And throughout his tenure, various political officials and world leaders came to Shaarei Zion and were always received and introduced warmly by Rabbi Hecht. It was also to his credit that the community was put on the map and held in high esteem on the political scene. Rabbi Hecht, I think later on in his life, published 3 books, one of which is his autobiography, let's say detailing his many political accomplishments and interactions. I think sadly in January 2013, Rabbi Hecht passed away. He was 90 years of age when he passed away. He was, and his funeral was actually held in Borough Park as well as in Shaarei Zion, and a memorial service would be held in the dome of Shaarei Zion in his offer. And once again, this was written by Joe Mansell, these notes over here. Now, the famous rabbi, great rabbi, born in 1900, Rabbi Yaakov Kassin, Zechet Tzedek el-Bracha, massive part of the community, founder. He was born also in a large rabbinic dynasty that spanned of 5 generations, Sephardic Syrian rabbis. Remember, in our series of the rabbinic biographies of great Syrian rabbis, we've spoken about him, of his rabbinic dynasty on various occasions before. As a young boy, he would attend the Yeshivat Ohel Moed, which was a prestigious yeshiva in Yerushalayim, which was, I think, the forerunner of the famous Yeshivat Porat Yosef, which we've spoken about various occasions before, over here inside this series. So that is very interesting. So he would actually learn there at that point in time. So I think afterwards, he was only 16 years of age. He was already known in Jerusalem for his extensive knowledge of the Gemara, the Talmud. By the time I think he was 18 years of age, sadly, he was orphaned, as both his parents sadly passed away due to illnesses, and times would become difficult, and let's just say just all over the world, I think at that point in time. Rabbi Kassin, unfortunately, it's reported over here on the website, would have stomach problems, which caused him pain for many years. Nevertheless, it just shows the greatness about him. He continued to focus and excel in study of Torah and Kabbalah, and he would get married, I think, to Rabbanit Mazal Hadaya. She happened to be the daughter of the famous Rabbi Shalom Hadaya, and really, really great rabbinic family, a great rabbi spoken about on various occasions before. He would go on to become a teacher at Yeshivat Porat Yosef, and let's just say he would be able to teach Torah, Kabbalah late into the night. He would actually live there, I think right next door to there. He would have an apartment very near there, and was able to write numerous books also on Kabbalah. Come what the late 1920s, Harav Kassin served as a Dayan of the Supreme Jewish Court of the Sephardi community of Jerusalem. He was also able to publish numerous books on various subjects of Kabbalah, Or Halevana, Yisod Emunah, the Pre-Etz Hagan, as well as various other books also. Now, his reputation was so great that, come what the year 1932, I think it was, around then, he was asked to travel to the United States of America to raise funds for the Sephardic orphanage of Jerusalem. While in America, he made a large impact on the Syrian community over there in Brooklyn. He would spend 6 months over there and signed an agreement that if it ever entered his mind to leave Israel, he would reside as a rabbi of Magen David in Bensonhurst. This was reported over on the website. Now, after a year, let's just say, of pleading for his return, Rabbi Kassin finally accepted the offer to become the chief rabbi of the Syrian community in Brooklyn. And come 1933, he would arrive with his wife and 4 young children. Immediately from the start, he worked tirelessly in strengthening the Talmud Torah, the synagogue, the Ma'oz Lebion, and every other organization at that point in time. In addition, over the years, he was extremely instrumental, reported over, in creating key institutions such as Magen David Yeshiva, the Sephardic Center, and many more places. It was calculated that over his tenure as chief rabbi, over 40 new institutions were established. Huge responsibility was put on that as a rabbi of the community, and he devoted his life, let's just say, to guiding and uplifting every member of the community, both spiritually and morally. His tolerant self-sacrifice, exemplary character, and a pleasant disposition gained him love, respect, and confidence from every community member. This would enable him to lead the community during, there will be turbulent times, various points in time. He would also preside over thousands of events such as chatanot, weddings, brit milahs, circumcisions, bar mitzvahs, unfortunately funerals that would have to take place, and various other important occasions, let's just say, at that point in time. So it was, he even reports over personally interviewed and counseled over 2,000 engaged couples in preparation for their marriage. And it was said that no occasion was complete without the presence of the famous chief rabbi, Rabbi Kassin. One of his core philosophies, I think, were peace and unity, achdut and shalom. And he headed the Bet Din over there, the Jewish court, in order, let's say, to settle disputes and keep peace among the people. And kept the people and families together, respected individuals' needs, whether they were rich or poor, young or old, observant or not observant. It was through these methods that the community grew exponentially during his lifetime. We have to report over. In addition, Rabbi Kassin created an enactment of marriage edict in the year 1935 in order to protect the community from outside influence. He had tremendous foresight to see what trouble would lie ahead. So he looked at the wide picture of the future over here, and he knew that if they didn't protect themselves, there would be problems. So this is what the website actually states over here, just using it. It's an undisputed fact that this edict or takana saved the community from assimilation and protected the community from melting away into American society. And we see what happened to many parts of American society all throughout the years afterwards also, which I have to point out. After a long, brilliant, obviously very productive life, he sadly passed away in December 1994. He was 94 years of age, and his funeral was attended by 1,000 plus people, and he would be buried in Har HaMenuchot also. And I think afterwards his leadership continued through his son, Rabbi Shaul Kassin, also very, very great rabbi he happened to have been. And so much more can be said. Once again, this was actually written by Rabbi Joe Mansour, this biography about Rabbi Yaakov Kassin, respectively. Now let's speak about Rav Shaul Kassin. He himself was also born in the year 1921, just like Rav El Nadav and Chacham Baruch was also. So he was born in 1921. He actually was born, I think, from the chief rabbi, which just spoke about, Rabbi Yaakov Kassin, who was the chief rabbi at that point in time, and Rabbi Masal Kassin. Remember, she was the daughter, as we said 5 minutes ago, of Rabbi Shalom Hadayar, respectively. He obviously lived in Jerusalem at a young age. The great rabbis of the generation were there at that point in time. When he was 12 years of age, he emigrated with his family to America and would settle in Bensonhurst while joining the Sephardic Syrian community. Rabbi Kassin learned in various, let's say, yeshivot, and received, I think, his semicha in the famous Yeshiva University. Come with the year 1945, Rabbi Shaul Kassin married Frida Seruya, Rabbinit Frida Seruya, and together they would have 8 children. While serving as a rabbi in the community, Rav Kassin taught in Magen David Yeshiva for over 30 years and installed, let's say, a love of Torah and Halacha into all of his students. He also served as a secretary of the Sephardic Bet Din, assisting his father with various cases that were brought to his attention. For many years, Rabbi Kassin and his wife taught marriage classes, let's just say, all throughout the various different points in time. And Hilchot Nida, for example, laws of family purity, and for brides, chatans, and kalas, respectively. And he was very instrumental, in the construction of the very first mikveh, the ritual bath in the community, assisting workmen in carrying cement in order to build, let's just say, to build a building quickly. He was a hands-on rabbi also, and he had love and passion for the Torah and mitzvot. He authored a book which is called The Light of the Law, which would give the community guidelines for Torah and mitzvot respectively. Now I think after he passed away in 1994, Rav Yaakov Kassin, Rav Shaul Kassin would then go on at that point in time to assume his father's leadership role and would lead the community the remainder of his life. And as chief rabbi, he stressed tolerance, that was one thing, unity, achdut, and respect for all people regardless, let's say, of their backgrounds and religious observance, and would lead the community with decades with a strong hand and strong heart. I think come 2018, sadly, he suffered from illnesses. He passed away at the age of 97. And so he was a very, very good rabbi at that point in time. He was fortunate enough only a few weeks earlier to march in the wedding, reported over, of his youngest grandchild, and being able to witness the weddings of all his grandchildren, is reported over. His funeral was held in Brooklyn and was attended by thousands many thousands of people. And later on, he would be straight away he would be buried in Har Menuchot in Eretz Yisrael. His body was flown over there. And once again, this excellent note was given from Joe Mansell from the community. Another key leader of the Syrian Jewish community in the United States of America, of this Shaarei Zion Synagogue, would have an integral part, was Harav Yom Tov Yedid, another great rabbi. He himself was born in Aleppo in Syria in 1926, and he was educated on the guidance of the famous Chacham Moshe Tawil, who was, I think, a former chief rabbi of the Chalab in the 1950s. In his adult years, Rav Yom Tov Yedid would serve as the chief rabbi of Chalab, of Aleppo. He led the community with thousands of years of glorious history and tradition. Obviously, served as the Rosh Yeshiva, the main yeshiva which educated all the children of the community. He would also serve as the official rabbi of the community, with, let's say, a handle on all day-to-day affairs over there. At that point in time, I think it was including, let's just say, kashrut, marriage issues, civil cases, halakhic matters, and much more. He would lead the community with a firm hand, and he wouldn't compromise when it came to matters of halacha, but he was loved by the entire community. And so very, very interesting enough. And I think in the 1980s, there was persecution and pogroms that would take place, and many of the community in Chalab would actually move to Israel and the United States of America. Harav Yedid, along with his family, would leave Syria and arrive in America and settle in the Syrian community in Brooklyn. He immediately joined the Shaarei Zion Synagogue, and as a rabbi, he was an inspirational figure over there and gives Shiurei Torah on a regular basis. He continued this role for decades and was admired and respected by all who knew him. In addition to giving Shiurei Torah in Shaarei Zion, Harav Yedid would spend most of his time learning Torah and writing a series of sefarim called Meir Tov, a commentary on the Torah and the entire Tanakh. In 2016, the rabbi passed away. Unfortunately, he suffered some illnesses, months of illnesses, and I think it would have a huge impact on the American community itself, on the whole of the American community, and Shaarei Zion especially. And he would be buried once again also in Har Menuchot. His body was flown to Eretz Yisrael, and his children continued to go on and teach Torah to all ages and support Torah institutions worldwide. Now, we have to mention Chacham Ovadia Yosef, who was seen as the spiritual leader of the community all throughout. Let's say a word about Chacham Ovadia Yosef, the former chief rabbi of Israel, between 1973 to 1983. Obviously, he was born in Baghdad in 1920. When he was 4, his family moved to Jerusalem, and he would enroll in Yeshivat Porat Yosef, becoming the leading student there, you could say. And he was under the auspices of Harav Ezra Atiyah at that stage in time. It's reported that Chacham Ovadia would become a dayan, a judge, at the age of 23. And he was appointed to become the assistant chief rabbi of Egypt a few years later on, and would settle in Cairo over there, strengthening yeshivot and strengthening the kashrut of the Egyptian community. He would be 3 years over there, and then would move to Eretz Yisrael in 1950, and would settle in Petach Tikva, being appointed as a judge over there in the rabbinical court. And he would publish early volumes of his famous halachic works, and will rise to prominence as a leading halachic posek of the generation. Come 1960, he was appointed a dayan in the Bet Din Hagadol in Jerusalem, which was the highest court in Israel. And in 1968, he was, he was named the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. And 4 years later, he was elected, at that stage in time, to become the Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. And during his years of 10 years of tenure, he became the spiritual leader and posek hagadol of the entire Sephardic world. And after the 10 years over there, he opened up the Shas political party in 1984. Obviously, one of the goals of it was to build Sephardic yeshivot, internationally strengthen, pride and confidence, and become a very powerful force in Israeli politics. I think they currently boast about 10 or 11 seats in the current Knesset, if I'm not mistaken. And over 30 years, thousands of yeshivot were established, and the Sephardic population would boom in of itself in Israel, throughout. And it's reported over how is he connected also to Shaarei Zion. He would actually visit Brooklyn on many occasions, the Syrian community, and he would always the first stop, one of the first stops was Shaarei Zion Synagogue over there. He showed great love towards the synagogue and the community, and valued the time he spent with the Shaarei Zion community. He shared many various Shiurei Torah over there and Divrei Torah, and became a regular, I think, in the kennis of the community itself. And I think at the time, he sadly passed away in 2013. I think October 2013 it was. Shaarei Zion held an arayat in the dome that attracted many thousands of people. His sefarim obviously is used all throughout the Batei Midrashim in Shaarei Zion, and obviously what a role he actually played over there. This once again notes from Joe Mansour, excellent notes in itself. Okay, now there's the current synagogue itself is absolutely blooming and flourishing. 1,000+ people coming on Shabbat every single day, and they have various different prominent some of the greatest Jewish speakers that come and speak in the synagogue in Shaarei Zion all throughout, especially on Shabbatot. I think they have a special Shabbat special speaker series over there where they have the congregation itself. I think it's in the Joe and Celia SS Dome, I think, respectively. They have great rabbis, and men and women attend these programs. They currently do a Mishnah Yomi program, a daily Mishnah program also. That's another thing they do, and they have various classes from the rabbis. I think this is an amazing website online called the itorah.com, which features this. I think there's a Chazan, a very great Chazan, world famous Chazan David Shiro, who does various brilliant Hazanot work in of itself. They have even a shidduch system. The community does. They do so much. I think there's various different rabbis, parts of the community that have various different programs. There's, I think, a fathers and son minyan run by Rabbi Eli Levi, I think a Shachar minyan, and various other rabbis, including Rabbi Moshe Mustashi, who does a Hazanot class, Rabbi David Gimel, Rabbi Morris Nakash, and Rabbi Zura Zafrani, various different rabbis. There's Rabbi Eli Sultan and Rabbi David Sultan that give over various different classes also, a Torah class, more in the terrace room itself. There's a Shabbat preschool minyan also in the Rabbi Matlub Abadi library, who we spoke about him before. I think that is actually given over by Rabbi Gabi Chama, I think, where they also do a Sudah Shlishit service, Mincha and Arvit, Divrei Torah, and they do prizes in itself. There's Pizmonim and Bakashot for boys that are over 8 years of age, and that's said by Hacham Chazan, Menachem Mustashi, respectively also, and various other programs. There's weeknight Mishnayot programs also for various different grades, and so on and so forth. So you can see the work that the synagogue itself is doing is absolutely phenomenal. Among the current rabbis, just a really old star, Rabbi Meir Yedid, Rabbi Yaakov Ben Chaim, Rabbi David Maslaton, Rabbi Moshe Lagnado, Rabbi Raymond Beida, Rabbi Raymond Heba also, respectively. The Rabbi Emirates happens to be Rabbi Abraham Hech, Zechet Tzaddik Libraha. Out the Chazanim, I think currently, as of recently in 2025, include Chazan David Shiro, Chazan Edward Farhi, Chazan Haim Eliyahu, Chazan Solomon Dayan, Chazan Yosef Sadia, Chazan Isaac Hidari, respectively. So, I thought this was an important class. We've explored the history of the Shaarei Zion Synagogue here in Brooklyn, as a special edition. So please, everyone, subscribe to the channel. We're a community that's learning about the great, let's say, not just the great rabbis of yesteryear, we're trying to explore the great communities of yesteryear also. So today we happen to speak about the Shaarei Zion community, one of the main Syrian Jewish congregations that has been about in such a brilliant community itself, respectively. So thanks very much. Subscribe. We are nearing at the moment 7,500 subscribers. So please join and enjoy, and thanks for taking time to watch this video. Appreciate it.